Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Good evening, everyone online. Welcome to Niranara, best place in the universe. I enjoy your company here. Um, I my personality is one that prefers small groups, so I prefer small monasteries and small retreats. So this is a nice size. My character is one that likes to get to know people, how who they are and how they tick, and it's very difficult in a big retreat or a big monastery. You just get burnt out. So bigger retreats are more like almost lecture format. Not quite. It's still meditation, but a retreat like this is it's always very interesting for me how people are practicing and developing. And then also I do like being with the same people over a decade. There's something quite interesting in that way too. That we're very much like family, after all these years, many of us, and to see how each person is working diligently, having their own challenges, having their own insights, actually teaches me a lot because I'm only one guy and I only have one set of experiences. And I do like to, I like to speak from experience rather than from theory, although the theory is always underlying my explanation of experience. That's why you have a tradition. And sometimes I just don't have the experience that a person is having, but I know someone who had that experience. And that's tremendously helpful. And so someone says, that sounds like that person. And then I can try talking through that. So the student teaches the teacher, and the teacher learns from the student. And so it's a very much a sharing of Dhamma in that way. And also just to remember, I really don't know if I'm right because I'm not preaching a doctrine. So if I answer a question, well, obviously I have experience and intuition, and I inquire about, well, how does it work for you, and where are you at with that, and have you tried? So obviously I have a sense of intuition, but I don't know. I might be wrong. So it's always with a teacher, you have to say, okay, I'll consider that. Because the teaches why teacher can be wrong, but not deliberately. It's not like some kind of malicious intent to fool you, nothing like that. It's just the nature of human communication. So like if some kind of meditation thing doesn't work for you, it's no one's fault, not mine, not yours. It just doesn't, it's not your cup of tea. So there is we're all very intelligent people. We have strong work ethic, all of us. I mean, to do this retreat, you have to have a very strong work ethic. Huh? Everyone's coming, and so we have very, very good qualities. And then we just have to reflect on cause and effect, what works, what doesn't work, and so on and so forth. So I'm very impressed. You're great. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Well done. Um, and I know it's not easy, but anyway, to the questions. Often when I mediate, that's a spelling mistake people are always making. Rather than meditate, they write mediate, right? I mean, I do that all the time. And my spell check doesn't correct it. So often when I meditate, it's one T difference. Often when I meditate, my mind will be totally blank for prolonged periods. No thoughts, not sleepy, just blank. then I'll give up and do what I perceive as more beneficial. For example, listen to Dhamma teachings. My question, should I persist with the blankness? If so, how long should I persist? So I pondered that. And the way I pondered that, to me, blankness is still some kind of sanya. It's a perception, right? And blankness is a different perception than brightness, different than a perception of uh, happiness or unhappiness, but it is a perception, and its contours are blank. But the fact that someone can define it as blankness means it is an objective experience. So then, is there some kind of preoccupation with blankness? Like, is the person trying to find something other than blankness? Is it a resistance to blankness? But because it's blankness, it doesn't have like the contours of a strong emotion. If you have fear, if you have anger, or you have memory, things like that. So it's blank. So what I thought, if I were in this situation myself, what I would do, I think I would go to who is feeling blankness and go back to that idea of the mind knowing the mind. And it's a venerable tradition in China and India, but not in Theravada Buddhism. And the question is the question, who am I? Which is a ridiculous question. And in Buddhism, we'd say, well, there's no I to find. But this isn't a philosophical question. It's a learning tool. That's all. So when person is perceiving blankness, there's someone that's perceiving blankness. So then you say, well, who is perceiving blankness? You won't find anybody, but you will find the silence of the mind. And turning back to the mind, to the mind. This is used a lot in the non-dual tradition, in the Vaita Vedanta, and it's used in China in, you pronounce it Huatou? What? In Chinese, anyone do Chinese? Huatou, Huatao? Sorry. Uh, anyway, we'll do English. Who am I? So the methodology there is, let's say you're just thinking, obsessing with thought. A very good method for obsessing with thought, for using that method. And so what happens if you're obsessing with thought, you probably then obsess with the thinking about the thinking. So you're you're worried about something, you're worried, it just keeps coming back, and you say, why am I worried so much? Got to figure out why do I always worry so much? But that's still the same sense of self, the same attachment. So you don't really break out of the cycle. But if you ask yourself, who's thinking, then there's no one you can find, but it breaks in to this closed loop of what do we call it, a jitta worm or something? It just keeps going round and round and round. Who's thinking? Where this method fails is if you try to find someone. That'll give you a headache, guaranteed, because there's no one to find. But there's something about a question which alerts you. If I say to you, how many air conditioners are there here? You don't know, but all of a sudden you look. Right? You're attentive. So doubt, it can be a very attentive an expression of language which brings attention. Now what you're paying attention to is just the very nature of this self-thinking, rather than the particular, like, let's say if I'm worried about my finances and I've lost my job, and the economy's down the tube, and I've got a mortgage, and so I have some serious things to worry about. And so the mind picks up the problem. You work with it for a while rationally. You've worked it out, but the mind doesn't know the future. So there's fear. So there's worry. What am I going to do? And what if this happens? Well, if that happens, then what am I going to do? And then you're a meditator and you think, well, no, I've got to stop thinking like this. So I've really got to, I've got to figure out how to do that. You're still doing exactly the same thing. You're still caught in the web of I thinking. But then you say, yeah, but who's worried? And that's a whole different perspective. Who's worried? And then it'll come up again. Who's worried? And you'll find that it arrests the mind, it arrests the thinking mind because you're just looking now. Who? Who's worried? Who's thinking? If you use it skillfully, if not, you'll start to have bhava tanha, trying to find out who's worried. And then then you'll hate me. You just feel this pressure. I mean, what does he mean? Who's am I? Is it me that's worried? Or is it the not self that's worried? Am I worried or who? That's the same. But like just a question who's sitting here takes you inwards to silence. Who's worried? Let's say you go like in interviews. Usually interviews are rehearsal and then replay. Before the interview, you kind of think about what you're going to say. Think, because you want to say it right. And then after the interview, you replay it, you realize why you said it wrong, right? We're human beings. So as you're rehearsing, you say, who's rehearsing? You're not trying to get rid of the thought. You're just waking up to the thinking process, and then you wait. A powerful worry would be persistent because the problem was real. And you'd have to solve the problem, but the worry wouldn't be solving the problem. So you start to break up the patterns of thought, the patterns of self-identity. So for this person, that's the only thing that kind of came to mind for me, because blankness is still a perception. It's a different than a toothache or something like that. And then who's experiencing this? Because blankness is it's like not having the cows in the field. I have the cows, I got something to look at and consider. When you have like a pain or you have brightness or even anger, this kind of really solid thing to look at. And blankness, what do you look at? Well, look at the very looker. Turn a mindful. So this is the way I would practically use Lompa Dun's the mind knowing the mind. The mind going outside is the cause. The result of the mind going outside is suffering. So I don't know how this person's jitta is working, but I could see that the attention is so much on blankness that it's somehow preoccupied with blankness. I mean, it's hard to imagine that. How could you be preoccupied? But I think it is preoccupied with blankness. What is blankness? What should I be doing? And then it's boring. And then because it's boring, I'll better do something else, which is fine. So I'm not saying the person shouldn't like listen to a Dhamma talk, but I think that would be an interesting inquiry. And that's why, but also as a methodology, that's one you can use a lot. It really is. It is very, very direct. Quite often, if you use the who am I or who is thinking, your heart opens. That's not uncommon. You start to feel the citta, you hear the heart there. If you're persistent with it, then it becomes a kind of like, just like you use putto. You use putto to always awaken the mind, then you use the who to awaken the mind. When you any obsessive patterns, those kinds of things, that's really useful for. Um, but if and also then I'm applying the Four Noble Truths as the basic, and I'm applying it again, like the first noble truth is there is suffering, not I am suffering. Again, I keep emphasizing that. That is a different perception. I am suffering is true. You know, if I've got a stomach ache, no doubt. But the way of noticing stream of consciousness and understanding what Luang Por Chah said, the reality of non-grasping. That's what we're doing as meditators. And we're developing, you know, good states of mind, so we're more psychologically balanced. We're happier. Yeah, there is that's very important. But deeper, we're taking in the Nibbana Sutta, and we're taking Luang Por Chah's suggestion that we got from Luang Por Sumedho's reading that the Nibbana is the reality of non-grasping. Now, what's that about? That's not grasping stream of consciousness, being witness, seeing anicca dukkha anatta. So that's important to understand intellectually. So you, as I say, you understand the project. Otherwise, teaching is just little bits and pieces, and you don't know why you're doing it. Why am I doing this? Well, I'm doing it to be a better person, sure. I'm doing it so the dose I experience doesn't hurt anyone, sure. But deeper than that, what's the project about? That's where I think the kind of a deep sense of what right understanding is pointing to. So renunciation, nekama, like this outfit that I wear, and the shaving of the head, that's about not grasping the khandhas. That's all. It's about not taking the khandhas or sense experience as the place where I'll find happiness. It's taking the unconditioned. That's what this is pointing to. Lompa Puttatat, I was talking, one of the interviews had this great phrase. He said, "Oh, joy at last to know there is no happiness in the world." Now, how's that for a paradox? Oh, joy at last to know there's no happiness in the world. What? That's not nice. Oh, joy at last to know there is no happiness in the khandhas. Does that help? But there is happiness in the khandhas. Vanilla ice cream is a really happy experience. And I certainly feel better when I lay down than when I'm sitting cross-legged. That's happy. That's comfortable. Yeah, but pleasure and pain, they're part of one package. And the realization of peace is beyond duality. And if you want to go beyond duality to the unconditioned, well, then, and you realize that, and oh, great. I don't have to have any experiences. I don't have to be happy. It's not that you're not happy. I just, oh, joy at last. I don't have to find happiness. You get it? No. Okay. Oh, joy at last is no happy. Well, what is the world? The world is that which arises and ceases in this human length body with our perceptions and our concepts and our intelligence. That's what the world is. You think it's an objective world, but is it? Your eyes just like if it was a real objective world, you wouldn't there'd be so many electrons you couldn't process anything. So our system of perceptions creates a world. Not that it's wrong. And we need to do that. So it's created. It's something that's created. And that is dualistic. It's pleasure, displeasure, up, down, sick, healthy. And in the world, arises and ceases, and the attachment to the world is a cause of suffering. So when I realized that there is a freedom, there is a freedom which is not dependent on worldly dhammas, on experience, on bodily feeling, on perceptions, on conceptions, on sense consciousness. And I realized there is a freedom in, as I say, a background or a knowing, then oh joy at last. I don't have to find happiness in the world. But the happiness is not the happiness of an ice cream cone. The happiness is the happiness of Nibbana, the unconditioned, the uncreated, the unoriginated, the unformed, the peace of non-desire. Have you ever meditated and you come to the point where you don't want anything? It happens. That's so cool. It is so nice. You don't want anything. You don't need anything. You don't have to judge or analyze. It's just like they say in Italy, dolce far niente. You're just happy to be. That's quite difficult, isn't it? Because we're always so busy doing, because we're seeking something. And where are we seeking? We're seeking in the world of experience. We're seeking in time. Look at how much of our sense of identity and happiness is a time-bound searching, like like going to the next event, or finding an experience I had last week, or a meditation I did yesterday, or getting rid of this one and getting that one. This is always this kind of busyness in the mind. And that's because we're attached to the khandhas. Our sense of fulfillment is in the khandhas. And renunciation, nekama, is saying, well, that cannot be correct because that is anicca dukkha anatta. It's not wrong. It's not saying that sweet is sour and sour is sweet. It's not saying that. It's just saying, don't look for the unconditioned in conditions. And when you kind of realize that, you say, oh, I got it. I get it. That's the direction. The direction is mind knowing the mind. Whereas tanha is always like trying to find it, the right one, the right situation, the right person, and on and on. So it's always the outward movement. So this back to the who, uh, it's that redirection. I would say it's directing attention to the a kind of involution rather than a exterior. It's the language. Well, rather than going out into sense experience, you kind of now go into the very sense of knowing, very sense of puru, and that people don't do that. Who, how many, like among your friends? When you go back and those people who aren't meditating, if you say to them, have you ever been aware of awareness? They'll think you're crackers. What are you talking about? Aware of awareness? Just eat your sushi. So it's kind of esoteric in that way. But that's what this is. This is what this is doing. Who's thinking? You're not going out, are you? You're kind of going in. Who's thinking? And then you have silence again. And then the desire mind is, what? What am I supposed to do? Who's thinking? Who's questioning? And it becomes a very persistent kind of practice. It's very powerful if you understand how to do it. If you misunderstand how to do it, then don't do it. It doesn't work and so on. But it's very, very powerful, used by a lot of the Advaita Vedanta tradition and the Chan tradition. I think Zen koans come a bit from those kinds of ideas. So it's the idea of using a thought, who am I? And then stopping the mind with a thought, who is thinking? So with all that thinking, let's call it a day.